Hey everyone, Chris here from Paramount Retirement Solutions, and in this video we're going to talk about Medicare penalties. It seems like when I talk to folks who are getting on Medicare for the first time, they have some misconceptions on what Medicare charges penalties for and what they don't. So let's just take a look at a few of the different parts of Medicare and see what Medicare actually charges penalties for and what they don't. So if we look at Medicare Part A, that's your hospital insurance. About 99% of Medicare beneficiaries don't pay a monthly premium for Part A. And as long as you've worked for 40 or more quarters for 10 years or more and paid a little bit into Medicare out of your paycheck, or sometimes if you qualify for Part A from a spouse's record, then you don't pay a monthly premium every month to have Part A coverage. So there's about 1% of Medicare beneficiaries that do owe a premium for Medicare Part A. So for those folks, if they don't sign up for Medicare when they're first eligible, they'll owe a penalty once they finally do sign up. And the amount is a 10% penalty for twice as long as the time that they didn't have Medicare for. So let's just clarify that with an example. So if someone is now 68 and they were first eligible for Medicare at 65, and let's say they kept working and just didn't sign up for Medicare. Now since they've gone 3 years without Part A from when they were first eligible, now for the next 6 years, they'll have to pay 10% higher than they normally would for their Medicare Part A premium. So if you're still working and you fall under that 99%, which is almost everybody that doesn't have to pay a premium for Part A, you don't have to. You won't be penalized later, but it's always going to be best to check with your benefits department, your HR department, talk to them to see if they want you to sign up for Part A or even Part B, which we'll talk about next. You want to find out how Medicare Parts A and B work with that employer insurance. The one reason you would not want to sign up for Part A is if you're contributing to a health savings account, because once you sign up for any part of Medicare, you can no longer contribute to a health savings account. So that's just something to keep in mind about Part A. So Part B is a little bit different. A lot of people are concerned about Part B because they're still working or their spouse is still working. They're covered under that plan, but they don't want to have to pay a penalty for Medicare. So let's take a look at the rules for Part B. So if you're still working or your spouse is still working and you're covered under a group plan and the employer that provides that plan has more than 20 employees, then you generally won't have to sign up for Part B. You won't get penalized for it later, because once there are 20 or more employees at an employer, and not people covered under the plan, but just 20 or more employees in general, then the rule is that group plan is the primary payer. It's the primary insurance. So if you sign up for Medicare Part A and B, then you're essentially going to have two primary insurances, and in most cases you're going to be overinsured. Now you do want to check with your benefits department, the HR department, see how Medicare would coordinate with your group plan, but generally they're going to tell you you don't need Medicare Part B. You're not going to be penalized because when you retire, then you're going to have a special enrollment period to sign up for Part B when you're ready. So if that employer is a small employer and there's less than 20 people there, then if you don't sign up for Part B when you're first eligible, you're likely going to have to pay a penalty later on when you do sign up. Because anytime there's less than 20 people at an employer, then Medicare is required to be the primary payer. It's required to be the primary insurance. And if you don't sign up for both Medicare Parts A and B, then you don't have Medicare. Medicare can't be the primary payer. So there will likely be a penalty later on once you do enroll in Medicare. It's worth a quick mention too. We're talking about employer sizes of 20 or more, and that's really going to apply to your general Medicare beneficiary, someone who's 65 or older. So in the exception of someone that's younger than 65 and has Medicare because you are on Social Security disability, that employer size now becomes 100. So if there's less than 100 people at that employer and you have Medicare because you have a disability and you're younger than 65, you want to make sure you have Parts A and B both in place, because Medicare will then be primary and the work insurance will be secondary. So that rule just changes a little bit from employer sizes of 20 to employer sizes of 100 if you have Medicare because of a Social Security disability and you're younger than 65. If you don't sign up for Medicare when you're first eligible and you don't have that qualifying coverage through an employer, whether you just continued with your individual plan, whether you didn't have any insurance at all, once you do sign up for Medicare Part B, the penalties can be pretty severe. So they count every 12-month period from when you're first eligible for Medicare to when you do sign up, and then it's 10% for each 12-month period, and that penalty lasts the rest of your life. So again, if we look at an example, let's say somebody is 70 and they've continued working for 5 years, but it was at a very small employer. Let's say there was only about 12 people working at that employer, and the person still working didn't sign up for Medicare at all, and they sign up now when they're 70. Well, now it's been 5 years, it's been 5 12-month periods. So if you look at 5 times 10% for each of those 12-month periods, now that Medicare beneficiary is going to have to pay 50% higher for their normal Part B premium the rest of their life, the rest of the time they spend on Medicare Part B. So let's take a look at Medicare Part D, Part D being the prescription coverage of Medicare. So where Parts A and B are provided directly by Medicare, Part D is something that you have to sign up for on your own, and it's offered through a private insurance company. So again, if you're still working, if you're still covered under a group plan, and that coverage is considered creditable coverage, then there's not a penalty that's involved for signing up later. However, again, if you don't have any creditable prescription coverage from an employer plan, then there will be what's known as a late enrollment penalty involved. So for Part D, if someone has gone more than 63 days without this creditable coverage, they're now going to be liable for a Part D late enrollment penalty. And the way it's calculated is that Medicare counts every month that you don't have creditable coverage from when you were first eligible, they count a 1% penalty against you. So again, if we look at an example, if let's just say someone didn't sign up for a Medicare drug plan at all and they're now 67 and they've gone 24 months now without creditable coverage, and for whatever reason they decide to sign up for a Part D drug plan when they're 67. Now, since it's been 24 months without coverage, there's now going to be a 24% penalty, but a 24% penalty on top of what? What they'll do is they'll multiply that percentage, in our example being 24%, they multiply that by the national average prescription plan premium. So this year in 2017, that average premium is about $34 a month. So they're going to multiply $34 times 24%, and that amount will be tacked onto your Medicare prescription plan drug premium from now on. It's only charged if you actually do sign up for a drug plan. So if you never sign up for a Part D drug plan, you'll never have to pay a penalty. But as soon as you do sign up for a plan, that penalty will be enforced and charged every month on top of your Part D premium. So the last thing to consider when we're looking at Medicare penalties is whether Medicare charges a penalty if you don't sign up for secondary insurance. So if we look at secondary insurance like Medicare supplements or Medicare Advantage plans, Medicare Advantage plans are often known as Part C of Medicare. So since there's a penalty in certain circumstances for Part A and Part B and Part D, well, what about Part C? Is there a penalty if I don't sign up for Part C? And the answer is no. If you just want to stick with original Medicare Parts A and B, and you don't have any secondary coverage from an employer or as a retiree, or if you just want to sign up for prescription coverage alone and risk not having coverage for the doctor and hospital parts of Medicare, then you're not going to be charged a penalty, but you are going to be on the hook for paying any remainders for any doctor and hospital, medical and hospital related expenses. Once Medicare pays their part, you're going to be on the hook for everything else that's not covered. So I know these penalties get a little bit confusing. Hopefully this explanation has helped clear up some things. If you do have some questions, my number's at the bottom of the screen. I'd love to be able to help you out, answer any questions you might have, and feel free to give me a call anytime. Thanks, guys.